Welcome back for another visual arts tutorial. And this one's not very exciting, but it has a very important technique and a little tool that you need to know here. So I'm going to use this project that I did recently, and I want to show you a bit about what's going on here. Now this is the end result, which had a lot of work on it, and I'll break that down to some different tutorials later on. But I want to talk about the sky right here, because this was a day for night shot. So as I look at the original, here's the original photo right here. Well, in fact, this is the original photo, the plate I was working with. So you can see it's a daytime shot, a bit overcast, but because in the photography it was metered here for the building, the sky gets blown out to practically white. This is called being clipped. So there's not really any information here, but you have a lot of good information right here for the structure. Now theoretically, the sky being white should make it very easy to remove that and put in your brand new sky. Now the most difficult thing to do will be to take a blown out clipped white sky, which is very bright during the day, and change it to night. So as I zoom in here and look at this edge, even though it's a lot of contrast and a nice strong edge here, you can see what happens. There's a little bit of kind of light pollution, also a little bit of what's called chromatic aberration, and this is just an artifact from the camera lens. And different camera lenses will do different things. But let me show you what happens when you try to make a mask with this, going from a very bright background, and of course we want to replace this and turn it into a nighttime sky. So here in our image, there we go. Here's our image, and I'm going to delete this layer mask. There we go. So this is what we have as I'm looking at what's going to be the final image here, and I need to remove this sky and put in the nighttime sky, which I have behind it, which would look something like that. Just a nice kind of dark gradient there. All right, so what happens is I'll go here to the channels and make an alpha channel here. If you need some information on how to make a mask procedurally from the alpha channels, you can check the description in this video, and I'll link to another video where I've talked about that. So this is kind of what we have right here. It's a pretty good looking alpha channel. As I zoom in, it's really nice and detailed along the edges, and I see what might end up being a little bit of problem there, but I'll show you how to deal with this, because the purpose of this tutorial is to show you how to do some fine-tuning the edge of a mask and get a really nice accurate mask that works. And this would be one of the harder situations, going from a very light background to a very dark background. So if I've already created the mask procedurally here in the channels, I've got this right here. I'm going to load this as a selection. And of course you hit the command key or the control key on a PC. Conversely, you can also hit the little button down here, which is load channel as a selection. And what that really shows you is the purpose of alpha channels is to create transparency and to build selections from. That's why they have that button built in here. So I'm going to load that as a selection. We can see the selection there. I'll turn on all my color layers, RGB or color channels, go back to my layers, and I'm on this image here of my plate. You can see that it is a smart object right there. And when working with photos, it's a good idea to make them smart objects. It forces you into working non-destructively. There's really, for a project like this, matte painting type of project, there's no reason you would need to do destructive edits on your plate. So I'm going to load I've got my selection loaded. I'm going to turn that into a mask. And of course, we see that right away it's the inverse of what we need. So on my mask, I'm just going to hit Command I and Control I on the PC and invert the mask, and I get something like this. Also, if you really want to click a button, if you go into the properties of your mask, you'll see, if I scroll right down there, there's an invert button, and that does the same thing. So they've seen it's really important to be able to invert a mask easily, so they put a button here. But of course, we know that using the keyboard shortcut is even better than that. All right, so there are a couple of problems here with this mask. I'll zoom in a bit more and we can see it. The first one is that there is all this junk right out here, and these are actually compression artifacts. The better quality image you work with, the less of these that you'll have. And the reason I have these here is that I was working with a JPEG initially, and even if it's a decent quality JPEG, you may get compression artifacts right here along the edge where there's a major change in color, kind of like a hard dividing line. So I've got a little bit of that, and I can see it in the sky. We need to get rid of that. And as you are, we use JPEGs a lot, even though we should use better images. But as you're making masks from channels, you may end up with a little bit of junk like this, particularly along hard edges. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I've selected on the mask here, and I'm going to do a levels adjustment right on this. And that's going to be Command L to get levels adjustment, of course Control L on a PC, and this is what I have. And you can see there's a big spike right here in the black and a spike right there in the white, even more of a spike in the white, and very little or practically nothing in between. I'm seeing a little bit right here. So this is the histogram, and just so you know, what this is showing me is this, that my mask is practically pure white all over here and then pure black right here. We can see there's a little bit along the edge that's not, and that's what we need to fix. Now, of course, as I zoom into this, we know that we want some little bits here along the edge that are not black or white. We need some anti-aliasing here. See, as I zoom in tight, you can see some grays here. This is the anti-aliasing between the white pixels and the black pixels. So we definitely want that to have a nice natural edge. If that weren't there, it would be hard and stair-steppy and junky. We don't want that. Okay, so in doing the levels adjustment here, I have to be on the mask, and I can see I'm on the mask here in my layers. Now you can be viewing the mask. You can be doing that while you work on it, or I'll just option click this once again. You can be viewing your image. Either way is fine, it doesn't matter. Sometimes it's actually easier to be viewing your image so you can see the results and how well they're working. Notice that as I view the mask, it's hard to see the problems that I have here along the edge. But if I am viewing the image, I can really definitely see them. And this is a result of going from a very bright background, which is what the photo was, to a very dark new background. These are some of the problems we have to deal with here. So again, making sure I'm selected on the mask. Once again, Command L for levels. And I want to grab the black eyedropper, or set the black point. That's what this is. So I'm going to click that. And these little junky bits here, this little noise we have here, these artifacts from JPEG compression, the reason that's there is they're not purely black. And they're kind of right along here in the histogram. So if I get my black eyedropper and I click in here, there you go. See that? I can kind of get rid of those. And we need to kind of just sort of squeeze it in and get rid of those. Notice how my number here has changed from 0 to 8, meaning it's moving up and making things that weren't quite black on the range of 0 to 255. Now everything 8 and below is black. And so you just kind of want to click on those and fine-tune that. Now I'm up to 12, and they're mainly gone right here. I would say they're mainly gone. And I can also grab the slider and move it physically in, because I'm seeing a little bit happening there. Now, what you want to know is you do need some grays happening here, because if you take it too much, you get this really harsh edge, which is very unnatural, and you don't want that. That's removing the anti-aliasing. So we want just enough to get rid of this little junk along here, but not enough to where it kills our anti-aliasing. So that's kind of what we're trying to do here. That's the balance that you're always trying to hit when you're making a mask and looking at this edge here. So I've got it about 21 from 0, and it looks like that should do the trick. There's a little bit left right there, but I'll keep that for now and I'll say okay. And just to show what happened here, if I undo that, see where it was before, and now here's what we have right now. Again, that's a lot better. It's cleaned up the edge. Something that you can do to clean up stray little pixels of either white and black or black and white, things like this. You can also go to filter and noise and despeckle. So right there, despeckle. Now the fact that there are no ellipses after it, it's just despeckle, means it's a filter that doesn't have any options. It doesn't have any amount you can adjust more or less. It just does it. So very often I'll do noise and despeckle, and that will help get rid of some of this junk along the edges that I don't want. So I'll just hit despeckle, and I actually can see that it looks like some of those went away. So if I option click on the mask, it looks pretty clean, looks pretty good, and I still have anti-aliasing happening. So that's definitely what I want. But we can see here, and this is the main point I want to cover, is that I've got this little halo or fringing, which is kind of tough to get rid of if you're going from a very bright background to a very dark background. And this is the one thing that will stand out and make your final image look natural, like your sky here was replaced artificially. We've got to get rid of this little edge here, and you can even go further and try and sort of desaturate some of this chromatic aberration along the edge. But the big thing is, the real big problem here we want to take care of is this kind of bright area right along here. Now what's interesting is that Photoshop has a filter that's designed to specifically deal with this kind of problem. And that's really all it does as far as I know. I mean, you can use filters to do all kinds of things, but this is really what this filter was designed for. Not one that many people might know about, and it's actually been in Photoshop for a long, long time. So if we go up to filters, again, make sure that you're on the mask and not on the layer itself, but the mask for the layer. Go up to filter and go down to other, and what you'll see is maximum minimum. Now these were actually both designed to work with mask edges. You've got maximum and minimum, and actually I didn't really click that yet, but maximum and minimum, and what they do is they take the black and the white and they kind of shift them over. Maximum will take the white and push it out. Minimum will take the black and push it out. And so in this case, what needs to happen is the black area of my mask, which is right here, needs to kind of grow or be pushed out a little bit to cover up this white here. And you want to do it just enough to where it works and covers up and gets rid of this, but not so much to where it starts to kill all the detail along the edges. So maximum and minimum. And again, maximum is just the opposite. It will take the white and push it out. But I notice as I'm working on making masks for image compositing, very often what I need is the minimum. So let's click minimum, and I want to show you what we have happen here. All right, turn off that preview. Pretend you didn't see that. So you've got really just two options here, roundness and squareness. And I'm not sure which one yours might come up with. As far as default, yours might say squareness. Now I'm not really sure that much of the difference of why you would use one or the other, roundness or squareness, or what they do, or the one's round and one's square. But here's the problem with squareness. Notice right here the radius says 1 pixel. I can't do it any less than that. If I take it up, it goes up in increments of 1 pixel. So right here in my little preview window, it's actually showing me that it's working on the mask. See that? There's the black and white of the mask. And see how it kind of takes that black and grows it in. If I turn on preview, we can see what's happening here. Now here's my 1 pixel, right? There's 1 pixel, and of course 2 pixels is going to be way too much. Now here's the trick about using minimum. You want to use it as little as possible, and usually it's going to be less than 1 pixel. If you're trying to do it more than 1 pixel, especially way up in numbers like this, really it means that your mask wasn't made right. It's designed for very small increments. So if squareness only gives me single full pixel increments, that doesn't work. I'm going to change that naturally to roundness. There's my roundness. And so notice how with this, I can go in increments of 1/10 of a pixel. And so really what you're trying to do is probably do something where it's less than 1 pixel. Definitely 2 pixels is way too much. But the trick is do it as little as possible, because the more you do it, the more edge detail you're losing. So if I take this down here to 0.2, and that appears to be the smallest amount, see how I still see that edge. So I just want to move this up here. There's 0.4 and there's 0.5. I want to do it to where it just takes away that edge enough. 0.6, 0.7, 0.9. There we go. See that right there? 0.9. And then we have now 1 pixel. But let me see if I can do less than a pixel. There's 0.9. There's 0.8. And somewhere along there, 0.9 or 0.8 pixels, looks like it's pretty good. So you can see there's the before. Well, there's that line that would just not work. Would definitely tell you the original photo had a bright sky and this was all fake. But if I turn that on there, now that looks a lot better. That cleans up that edge and just takes that mask and pushes it out a little bit. There's a term which is growing or choking the mask. And so that means take that mask edge and move it one direction or another. So this is what I want here, just a tiny bit of adjustment to that mask, because using the channels, I already made a pretty good mask here, but I just want something to fine tune it and get it to look good. So with that right there, I'm thinking that looks pretty good. 0.8, and remember, as little as possible to get the effect you want. So if that looks good, I'm going to say OK. Now that edit was a destructive edit on my mask, but there's no way around that. So you just kind of have to do it that way and just live with it. There's one other edit you can do to the mask, which is non-destructive, and I really like this. Notice how my edge looks a little bit sharp. It's a little bit crispy along here. And the photo at this level of being zoomed in, I can see is a little bit soft. And very often digital photography is going to be a little bit soft. So as you're making masks with the channels and you're using levels to really crunch those values down, you might end up with an edge that's a little bit harder or sharper than what your photo is. There's a great way to do that. Now, years and years ago, what we used to do is actually go to the mask and do a little Gaussian blur on it and soften it up. And that, of course, would be a destructive edit. Now, that's okay, but the cool thing is that in more recent versions of Photoshop, in the mask properties, Photoshop has added a mask feather. And again, this is really great because it will work in tenths of a pixel. And very often what you want to do with something like this is just feather the mask a tiny bit. Now the trick here is you're not trying to make it look blurry or soft, you're just trying to make it match the look of the pixels in the original plate. So if I take this mask and take the feather and put a little bit there, there's 0.4, maybe I'll even do like 0.3. Sometimes just that tiniest little bit, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, depending upon the size of the photo you're working with, will soften it just enough so that when it's all pulled out here and you look at it, that edge looks really nice and accurate and stands out, being seamless and natural, like that new background, that dark background or sky you put in is really there. And so then what you would get is this type of thing. There is our edge. And so if I look at my final here, that's the kind of thing I'm looking for. Nice and clean, no hint of the original little halo from that white sky coming through, and the edge doesn't have any junk along it, and it's softened just enough to where it matches the pixels in the photo. Well, that's it for this tutorial. As I said, it was just going to be a little quick and simple one, but even though it's short and sweet, It's actually a really, really important technique to know to get the best mask edges you want. And in image compositing, matte painting, anything like that, that's key, having those good edges. So do whatever you need to take those rough, junky edges and make them look great. This should be just another important tool in your Photoshop toolbox. I hope you have enjoyed that, and stay tuned for more tutorials and details on this image for next time.